Thanks so much for staying with us for midday. The U.S. Congress is on break this week, but Utah's congressional delegation is busy here at home. Senator Mike Lee here in studio to talk about some of the things he's working on in Washington. Great to have you with us. Morning.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Hey, one of the big things you've been working on is this USA Freedom Act, and it really gained a lot of traction when we saw that appellate court ruling on the NSA surveillance program, but recently the Senate voted not even to take it up. What's your reaction to that?
So the Senate voted not to take it up. This happened after midnight on Friday night. I suspect that vote probably would have turned out differently had senators known how the next vote was going to turn out. That is, there were some who were hoping for a short-term extension, an extension of 60 days.
On the Patriot Act.
On the Patriot Act. There are three provisions of the Patriot Act that are set to expire. One of them is Section 215, which is the provision used to justify this collection of all the calling data. Data on who you call, who calls you, when the call occurred, and how long it lasted. That's one of the three provisions that's set to expire. Some wanted to just extend those provisions for 60 days. That got only 45 votes out of 60 votes needed. My bill, the one that I introduced with Senator Pat Leahy, a liberal Democrat from Vermont, which received 338 votes in the House, strong support from Republicans and Democrats, probably would have passed in the Senate had the votes been ordered differently, had members realized that the extension was not going to pass or even come close.
So what would the USA Freedom Act do? What is it about the Patriot Act that you don't like that your bill would fix?
The most important thing that it would fix is that it would end the collection of bulk data, meaning it would end the collection by the NSA of all calling records, just going to the telephone companies and saying, send us all of your calling records on everyone. Doesn't matter whether they're people who are making calls to terrorists or to people who are themselves in contact with terrorists. We just want everyone's phone records. We're going to store them in a database for 5 years at a time. This bill would instead require the government to show that in order to get phone records, they need to show that the phone number in question is in some way in contact with a terrorist or with somebody who is in turn in contact with a terrorist.
So to have more of a specific warrant in that situation. Okay, I want to talk to you about ISIS because over the weekend they've taken control of some pretty key cities in Iraq. Are you concerned about that? And more importantly, are we taking the right approach with our approach to ISIS in Iraq?
I am very concerned about ISIS. This is a group that does not mean us well. This is a group that is increasingly violent and is increasingly bent on harming Western interests, on undermining anything that smacks even of Western interests. And that's why we're waiting for the president to show some leadership here as the commander-in-chief. He has the ability to present a plan. Any plan that he has to address what's happening with ISIS, to fight ISIS, needs, of course, to be brought before Congress. And I look forward to reviewing any plan that he brings to us.
Do we need more U.S. boots on the ground there to deal with this?
There is understandably a lot of reluctance on the part of the American people to get involved in yet another war. But again, this is where we need presidential leadership. We need the president to step up and identify what it is that can stop ISIS. We would all hope that we could do that in some way that doesn't require boots on the ground. But we'll see what the president has to say on that.
Okay, sounds good. Just last month, all of us turned in our taxes. Some of us got refunds, maybe not others. But it's just so complicated. You know, the average person, even advanced people, can't even hardly understand it. You have teamed up with Senator Marco Rubio for tax reform. Tell us a little bit about that.
Senator Rubio and I have developed a tax reform plan that would dramatically simplify our tax code, would move us from our current system that's really complicated, that occupies about 75,000 pages of code, to a simplified system in which we'd have two rates on the individual side. Nearly more than 80% of Americans would pay under a simplified rate of 15%, subject to two deductions for charitable contributions and another for mortgage interest. It would also create a new child tax credit to offset what we call the parent tax penalty. The bill would also undo the marriage tax penalty, and I think this would be good for Americans generally. It would also be very good for Utahns.
Okay. We have about 30 seconds left, and I really want to get to your Smarter Sentencing Act. I did a story with you about this several months ago. I put it on Twitter, and I'm kidding you not, it got responses for weeks, even months after that. A big issue. We just saw it here in the state of Utah. You're working on it on the federal level as well.
Yes, so this is another example of legislation that I've been able to put together that has cobbled support from Democrats and Republicans alike. I teamed up on this one with Senator Dick Durbin, a liberal Democrat from Illinois. he and I agree that our sentencing system needs to be reformed and that we've got too many minimum mandatory penalties within the federal system that are excessive. And so we've come together with some very common sense reforms that has a lot of support from both Republicans and Democrats.
And similar to the reform we saw here in the state of Utah, it's more of a focus on treatment as opposed to incarceration. Is that correct?
Well, this particular bill deals simply with the sentencing, deals with the way sentences are determined.
Okay.
And we were pleased that the president came out openly in support of it. And we were also pleased that we've got a lot of support, not only from senators, but also from congressmen of both parties.
All right. Utah Senator Mike Lee, thanks so much for your time. You're welcome anytime to let us